So this is the real estate real simple seminar. So it's tagged how to strategically source, fund, and scale your wealth without making costly beginner mistakes. So as I said, there are people at different levels of experience, different knowledge levels, but I'll do my best to pitch it at a level that everyone can get an immense amount of value from. Who am I? Many people here will know me. My full name, as you can see on the screen, is 𝗀𝗶𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗲. I'm the co-founder of IKP Group, and we help busy professionals and overseas investors to buy and, invest in property here in the UK. We do it in a very strategic manner. My background, I'm a doctor. I'm a GP qualified early last year, and I brought part of that experience. I still practice as a doctor for those who always like to ask that question of why did I leave medicine? No, I didn't. I've just found joy and pleasure doing something else that also gives financial guarantees to people. So I still work as a GP part-time, but I do a lot of property investments for myself and for my colleagues, for busy professionals, both in the UK and outside. So wherever you're watching from in the world, we can help you. So that's me in brevity. If there's something you wanted to ask about who I am, please feel free to pop it in the chat. Now, what's the hard truth about UK property? And I think that's a good point to start, is that lots of people that I speak with, I'm talking from my personal experience, they try to do so many things that they have heard. They talk about property websites, so you have Rightmove, Zoopla, several of them like that. So people want to do things on their own and they hope it will work. But hope is not a strategy, as you can see on the screen. It's not enough to just hope. It's not enough to want. It's safer to have a predictable system where you can say, if I do this, this is what will happen. And you can say that with property. Now, when I listen to myself talk like this, I couldn't have said this 3 years ago because I knew very little. But over the last few years, I've been able to, through knowledge, experience, and education, be at this point where I can share some of that experience with people. I can explain to them some of the mistakes I have made, some of the mistakes I have seen other investors make, and how to avoid them. So that's the hard truth about UK property, is that there's a lot of noise. And once you're able to filter out the noise, obviously by getting educated, by being on a seminar like this, by also talking to those who know. Why do many beginners fail? There's something we call in the UK and all over the world, DIY, or it's do it yourself. Why should I get someone to do things that I could do myself? So if you remember what I said at the start, many of the people I speak with or work for are busy professionals. They have very busy lives and schedules. And if you look at how much time getting a property will take in terms of when you're having to search for the property, visit it, analyze the numbers, check for any errors, check for any problems that may exist in the property, negotiating on it, talking with a mortgage advisor, talking with the solicitor, then getting the builders in. It's a lot of work. And some people don't even understand the concept of what's called a mortgage. How does it work? What's the difference between a residential mortgage and a buy-to-let mortgage? That's, if I speak with 100 people, if I would say for the UK clients, out of 100, I would say 70 to 80 of them do not have a clue about what an interest-only mortgage is. For overseas investors, that number rises to about 95% who have no clue about what a mortgage is, or if they do, they only have an idea about residential mortgages, which means you are getting a loan to buy a house to live in yourself, different from if you're doing it for business. So that's something here most people that I've spoken with, in my experience, don't know how to leverage. So that leverage blind spot, the legal black hole, as many people underestimate how long or how hard was the process of buying the property is in the UK. It takes a lot. And in my experience, it takes somewhere between 8 and 24 weeks to complete on a property. And that's a lot of time. I'm talking of weekly exchanges of emails, answering and asking questions. It can get overwhelming. So if you are a starter or you know someone who is, then the legal aspect of buying a property, I know it's boring, but it's important to set it out there first. It can be daunting if you don't understand. And then the third, which I find the most, scary, is the location. Where do I buy? Again, in speaking to many people, they want to buy where they have childhood memories. They want to buy a house where they, have seen a city that is very popular in the movies, or the club they support is close to the place. Very different funny reasons, or a place that looks nice. And that's not exactly how it works in terms of picking a location. And the one thing you cannot change about a house when you buy it is the land on which it stands. And a common maxim in property investment is that a house is only as valuable as the land it stands on. You can rip out the kitchen, you can change the entire living room, you can add extra rooms, you can make all the rooms en suite, but you really cannot do much to change the land on which it's standing. So it's best to buy the worst house on the best street than to buy the best house on the worst street. While you can do a lot to change the house, you can't really do much to change the location. So getting the location right, in my opinion, is one of the best decisions that any investor can make. It doesn't have to be emotional. It can't be sentimental. It has to be done with a very clear head, and be sure that you're getting the good value for your investment. So think about leverage, think about the legal bits, and then location. Those are very important things to get out of the way at the start. The minute you begin to fiddle with, oh, should I choose Manchester or should I choose Birmingham? What's the government doing in this particular location? I purposely have not mentioned Nottingham, because I know everyone hears Nottingham from me. But if you're open-minded about where would I love to invest, then you need to take away sentiments, you need to take away childhood memories, and just ask, what are the numbers for Leeds? What's the numbers looking like for Derby? What is it like to invest in Nottingham? What does it look like to invest in Southwest London? Those are the main questions that you need to ask yourself. Now, I talked about the DIY trap. You want to fix blinds in your house. I did fix the blinds in my house. All 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, altogether about 7 rooms. That's including the living room and the kitchen. And it was a hell lot of work to get that done myself. And when I came to the end of it, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't. I would get someone to do it. So DIY trap, it's easy if it's something you could get to the end and do it yourself well. But with property, because you'll be putting in money, you want to make sure that you're doing it right. What do I mean by that? You want to avoid costly mistakes. For example, if you're working as a nurse, you're working from morning till night, or you're working a mix of shifts, you do early shift or you do late shift, 12-hour shift. And in the middle of that, you have to go for reviewing for a property you want to buy to rent out, or you have to be on the phone to solicitors, or you miss a call from your mortgage advisor and they were trying to get you a better deal with another lender, you weren't available on the phone, or you have to go and view a property on the weekend when ideally you should be spending time with your friends and family. You're overseeing trades teams, builders, they're missing deadlines, you're not sure exactly if what they're quoting for you is right. That's the DIY trap, and that's not the best for new investors. If you put that side by side, just what's next on the screen, the strategy confusion. At times I get on calls, and by the way, in my investment calls, I speak with, on an average, in a month, I would say somewhere between, if I get it right, should be between 80 and 100 people. So I'm talking from that pool, the number of people that are not clear about what they want, how they want to invest. You hear people for some periods, they talk about Airbnbs, which is very flashy. Then they talk about HMOs. Then they talk about BRR. We'll get to that. And what does all that mean? How do I choose what is best for me? How do I choose the kind of strategy that will work for my goals? That's something really, really important to consider. Why do I say that? Once you're not clear at the start about what you want to do, then it causes confusion. So today you're thinking about Airbnbs, then you see something on YouTube, you know the way the algorithms work, and then all of a sudden you're thinking about short lets. And then while you're still thinking about that, you then hear about commercial property, and that's the next thing you want to do. While you're still trying to pull funds together to do commercial property, then you hear that, oh, it's now about buying land and selling it, and then you shift again. What happens is that, just like they say, a rolling stone never gathers moss. You will never get anything done that way. So the first steps to take includes being very clear about your strategy. For example, people talk to me about buy, refurbish, refinance, HMOs, Airbnbs. I don't do it. That's just, I'm sorry to say it in such a blunt way. I've had investors who wanted to invest with me, and the minute they mentioned Airbnb, oh, I'm sorry, because I don't know much about Airbnbs. But if you talk to me about buy to let any day, I would be happy. Buy to let, that's my thing. And that's because I'm very clear about what I want to do for myself and the service that I'm offering investors. Now, this slide, if you can take a screenshot, if you want to take a picture of it, it's the most valuable slide on this webinar. Now, we've put on here the different types of strategies. I'll tell you what all these names mean shortly and how they work. There's some of them that work in expensive areas best, some work best in cheap areas, some bring in loads of cash every month, while some would bring in long-term wealth. Now, having a clear sense to what this means, as you can see from this slide, none of them ticks all the boxes. So that's why it's important to be very clear from the outset, what exactly am I looking to achieve? Now, for example, now BTL, if you're putting notes down, it's buy to let. BRR, now there are two types of BRR, so all of them are 𝗶𝗃𝗃. So there's buy, refurbish, renovate, or buy, refurbish, refinance, and then rent. So that's 𝗶𝗃𝗃. You can actually change the arrangement of the R's there. So it can be buy, rent, and then refinance in that order. So I'll tell you why I prefer the second one, because that gets your investment working immediately. BRRR is not as exciting as it used to be a few years ago. Now, if you are in the trades team, you are estates agent, or you are a mortgage advisor, I'm not going to ask you to put it in the chat, but I'm sure you will agree with me that what used to obtain some 3, 5, or maybe 10 years ago in terms of refurbishing and refinancing is not as quick for two reasons. The banks are not, so lenient in terms of how much time they give you between when you buy, refurbish, and when you can refinance. And since Brexit, interestingly, maybe sadly, the turnover of refurbishment projects or renovation projects has become slower. What used to take about 5 to 6 months is taking about 9 to 10 months easily in terms of from when you buy the property to when you are able to refinance or flip. Now, flip, similar to BRR, but you're not keeping the property. For a flip, you buy, you renovate, and then you sell for a profit. Very popular in the US, and as you can see here, it works in expensive areas. So take, for example, you buy a property in an area where a 3-bed semi-detached house sells for $300,000, and you're able to get it at $175,000 or $165,000. And then you spend $35,000 on the refurbishment. So easily there is already a $80,000 to $90,000 gap. And that's what makes this particular strategy exciting, because you can buy, renovate, and sell. So you can see it works in expensive areas. It tends not to work in cheaper areas because the price difference will be lower. It brings in loads of cash, but it doesn't bring in long-term wealth. So buy-to-let, on the other hand, works in cheaper areas and it brings long-term wealth, even though it doesn't bring large amounts of cash every month. And then you've got HMOs, which is houses of multiple occupancy. I have done a video on that earlier when we spoke about what is a HMO, what will I advise, HMO or single let. So HMO is when you have multiple unrelated individuals living within a single dwelling. So you have multiple unrelated individuals. So you can have them as 3 different working class people. Each of them has their own room. Sometimes they have ensuite toilets. and kitchen, sort of a studio, 3 or 4 studios, sometimes as much as 5 or 6. So that's HMOs. Again, very similarly, it works in more expensive areas and it tends to bring in long-term wealth. In terms of large amounts of cash, for the HMO, while I've crossed it out, it does bring large amount of cash. So that's an error that I'll need to correct when we're sending out the slides. So it does bring large amounts of cash. In fact, it does bring more than a buy-to-let, but doesn't exactly bring in long-term value comparatively to a building of the same size. And so you've got social housing, new builds, and then commercial conversions. Now, we've arranged them in the order of, I would say, complexity. What would be my advice to a beginner investor in the UK? I would say start slow and keep going. I would not advise the person that's investing for the first time to start looking at commercial conversions, for example. I didn't, and I don't advise anyone to, or even at new builds. I would say look at the simpler stuff, get your hands working, get to understand the system, and then you are building in, a reputation, you're building in a culture, you understand how things work. You also get to meet more people. You meet lenders, you meet solicitors. Once you've done that 2-3 times for a few months or years, then you can look at trying more complex or exciting stuff. If someone, for example, wants to start all the way with new builds as a first-time investor in the UK, that would not be my humble advice. Now, I talk a lot about buy-to-let because it's the safest and the simplest to carry out in the UK. Buy-to-let, it's not the most exciting because there's a lot of noise, as I said at the beginning, on YouTube, on Facebook. People tell you you could pay for a house, refurbish it, and pull all your money out. Anyone who does property day in, day out will literally laugh when they hear things like that because it's simply not true. In 2026, it is near impossible to buy a house, refurbish it, and pull out all your money. It's not impossible, but it is very, very unlikely. People still do it, but it comes very, very, almost like once in a lifetime. It's not as frequent as it used to be several years ago. So that's why BRRR, it's lovely, it's good, it's nice when you can pull out most of your cash out of what you invest. So let's talk about buy-to-let, which is my thing. And I'm sorry to bore you with buy-to-lets, but you want to invest in the UK, what will I advise? I'll advise you buy-to-let, 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 buy-to-let. It sounds boring, it's vanilla, but it is safe, it is secure. Think about it this way. In 2059, would there be a reason why people would not need to have homes? Absolutely not. If you follow the news, you see that there's a lot of public outcry about HMOs, especially with the discussions around immigration, which is a very sensitive topic. So you see that many councils, many boroughs are actually not giving out new HMO licenses. They are giving new rules in terms of Airbnbs. So that already makes it less predictable compared to single buy-to-let. And buy-to-let runs on 2 engines, the rental income and the capital appreciation. I did note that some of us are watching from outside the UK. I think that's quite a number watching from Nigeria. And this is one slide that I think is of utmost importance. When you buy a house in Abuja, you buy a house in Lagos, you buy a house in Kaduna, you will make money once you get your rent every year. And that's mainly because there are no readily available options for leverage, by which I mean mortgages. So you really only make money through the rental income. So when you tell an investor from Nigeria, for example, you're going to need about £50,000 for a buy-to-let in Nottingham, and then they ask you, okay, so what's the rental income going to be? And you give a realistic figure of about £300 every month, which ends up about between £3,500 and £4,000 per year. Converting that to Naira, that will give you about 7.6 to about 8-point-something million. And the answer you get, there's this pushback you get and say, wow, that's too little. If I were to buy a house in Katankwe, if I were to buy a house in Ikoyi, this is how much I will get by rent. And that's very myopic if you look at this first engine, when you look at just the rental income. Anyone who knows property, in 5 years' time, as long as you buy in the right area that's got a history of good capital appreciation, then you are guaranteed that the house will increase in value by between 5 and 7%. That's exactly what it is for Nottingham. So in 5 years' time, you're expecting that that house will have increased by value of between 25% and 35% in its value. So make it simple this way. If you get in a 5-year period, 16 or 20,000 by the rental income, in that same period, a house that you bought 140,000 is most likely going to increase in value to about 170 to 180 and sometimes more. So you tend to make at least nearly double of what you make in the rent by the capital appreciation alone. Now, why this looks vague, but when you combine it and look at the fact that you can actually use a leverage of refinancing the property between a 2 and 5 year period, then the game gets interesting. And that's actually how most landlords in the UK have built their property portfolio. I shared a video about a few days ago where I talked about a gentleman, the landlord of one of the properties we're getting for an overseas client. And he started to buy property when he was 29. He's retiring at 59 and he has 40 properties. And he didn't buy all of them by cash. What he simply did was he bought the first few and he started to refinance them every few years. So once they increased in value, he pulled money out of it tax-free and was able to buy other property. Now, if this is something that you really like to understand, I have very detailed videos on my YouTube channel, and it's going to be at the end of this video or the end of this webinar, where you can actually look at what does capital appreciation mean. When I buy a house with a mortgage, what's the advantage? And that's the power of leverage. Now, if you had £150,000, now don't get scared out of your seat if you don't have. I'm just giving that as an example. You had £150,000 as money that you wanted to buy a property. You could do one of two things. You could look to buy a house that is 150,000, that's one, or you could look to spread it across 3 different properties. Now, what will happen if you buy just one? You get rental income. Let's assume the rent is 1,200. You get that, and all of it comes to you, especially if you're managing it yourself. And then you get the rent. If the property increases in value in 5 years to 180,000, what has happened is that you've made 30,000 on 150. Just do the math. But if you bought 3 different houses at 150,000 using a mortgage for each of the 3, if each of the 3 then increases in value, what you've had is 30,000 value appreciation in 3 places, or what you call equity. So the equity has risen 30,000, the same price of the house, but because you've now leveraged, which means you use the bank's money and you've been able to build equity for yourself. I've discovered that some people need to hear this again and again. So feel free to play this back. Once you get the recording, just play it and listen to it again. And you'll see why leveraging with a mortgage is one of the smartest decisions you can make. And someone says that, this popular maxim of, the 8th wonder of the world is compounding. If you look at it, those of us who do stocks and shares, you buy stocks, you see what compounding does. I would say that leveraging with a mortgage is something that in the financial systems, the wisest and the smartest people have been able to use it to their advantage. So if you're thinking about buying property in the UK, you know someone that is, I would definitely ask you to look at this very carefully. Not just the rental income. What is the capital appreciation? How much is it expected to rise? Do not forget, if you have any questions, please just pop them in the chat and I'll deal with them as we go. Now, what do I find with most novices? I think I'm no longer a novice. I used to be a novice a few years ago. And this is the funny thing. I've talked about DIY, they want to do everything themselves. And it wears them out eventually, because trying to manage different individuals per day. For example, I do my best. I speak with solicitors, mortgage advisors, different people, estate agents, vendors themselves. I speak with investors every day. And I can say that my email response rate, except it's not something I need to attend to, my email response rate is under 30 minutes. At least if I get an email, I respond to it in under 30 minutes. If I bring in my team and those who help also respond to messages, it is even shorter than that. Now, a person who works a full-time job could certainly not match that. And sometimes the difference between getting a good deal and a bad one is your ability to take an opportunity when it comes. I've talked about location. I'm not going to drive it down your throat again. But once you buy a property in an area that is not growing, I speak with people who want to buy houses. Please, if you live in any of these areas, it's not personal, but there are certain areas of the UK. If you buy a house today, you can buy it at £60,000. And if you come in 2032, the house will be £67,000. So it will add perhaps £1,000 in value every year. And that's not what you want to really do with your investments, because that location is not growing. In fact, in some areas, there's one of them that starts with D. I'm not going to give the full name. The house could actually be in negative equity by the time you're checking. And then I've spoken about cash buying because people are averse to the idea of debt, so they don't want to owe, so they confuse good debts with bad debts. Again, I'm sorry I have to push you again to my YouTube page. I've done a video on what a good debt is and what a bad debt is. People take loans to go on vacation. They take loans to buy liabilities like a car, like a residential house. But once you talk about getting a mortgage to buy wealth building property, then they run scared, because the idea of how to use and leverage debt has not been taught to many people. Please put a 1 in the chat if you ever were taught in school what a good debt or what a bad debt is. Put a 1 in the chat if you were taught any of that, whether in secondary school or university. If you were taught, put a 1. If you were not taught, please put a 2 in the chat. And let's just see who wins this one. You were taught good and bad debts, even if you studied accounting or accountancy in school. Let's get some answers in the chat. Let's see. 2, 2, 1. Wow, good. Just one person so far. 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. I'm sure the person, at least I know one of the ones, you studied something around that. But the average person wasn't taught about what good debt is. So we have credit cards and we use credit card to buy clothes, which is nice. You use them to buy phones. You take out a phone, what do you call it now? A phone contract. Except the phone is something you use to do business and make money. It's a depreciating asset. And if you look to sell the same phone next year, it will definitely be have reduced in value compared to when you bought it. So cash buying, personally, I would never advise you to do that, except you have personal reasons or circumstances, or maybe you're not able to get a mortgage. Wherever possible, you should and you would need to get a mortgage. It spreads your resources further, and it also helps you to leverage the bank's money. What happens when you use a mortgage? Every equity gained on the property will belong to you in a sense. And that's why once you use the bank's money, the equity is yours to keep. We're looking forward to, in one of our upcoming webinars, bring on one of our mortgage advisors to just talk us through what a mortgage is. So that's something we'll be happy to consider and work on. So don't forget, rental income, yes, good. Capital appreciation is the engine driver. We talked about cash buying. Now, here is where things start to get interesting. I want to invest. How do I do so in a very clear-headed way without taking any huge risks? Now, we work with several mortgage brokers. We have mortgage brokers that are tailored to different people, whether you live in the UK or live outside the UK. In fact, I remember speaking to one particular investor who was so worried about whether he would get a mortgage based on the fact that he lived outside the UK. He lived in Nigeria specifically. And I said, I've just looked at, your employment history. I've looked at your background. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't get a mortgage. So we have specialist brokers that we work with, and they can guide you in terms of getting the best mortgage products that will work for your investment. How about the conveyancing? If you remember earlier in this webinar, I did mention that it takes on the average 8 to 24 weeks to complete on the property purchase. I know it's quite faster in the US. In Nigeria, I'm sure you might be able to, if you bought a house in any part of the world, you need to just put how long it took you, whether you bought it personally, residential, where you live now, just state the location. If it's Lagos, how long did it take you to buy it? Let's assume you didn't build it. Or how long did it take you? If you bought a house in the UK, how long did it take you? Or you know someone that did, just pop it in the chat. 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Or you're trying to buy a house, how long has it taken you? And that's where we're coming for you to offer stress-free conveyancing. So we do all the heavy lifting. We take over the difficult conversations. We handle the complex paperwork, and we ensure that you are hitting the right timelines. So that's something we can guarantee you. And that is the service. That's why we call it a hands-free service. Location, location, location. I live in Derby. I invest in Nottingham. I invite investors to invest in Nottingham. There are other very lovely cities, but I only talk about Nottingham because it's where I can beat my chest. I can boast that if you tell me a postcode and tell me the size of the house, I can give you the likely value of a house in a good condition within 2 minutes. So we're talking about NG5, NG3, NG8, NG6, NG2. So Nottingham is our area. We focus there because we have local knowledge. We know the streets. We walk them from time to time. We view properties there every single week. And that's why we talk about Nottingham a lot. Now, if someone wants to invest in Manchester, can we facilitate it? Yes. But I wouldn't be beating my chest about Manchester as much as I would with Nottingham, obviously, because I don't have as much local knowledge, and that's the sincere truth. Most experts that do what I do, they focus on particular areas, and that's what helps them build credibility. That's what helps them build relationships. That's why we have chosen to focus on Nottingham. So this is our investor journey in brevity. Once we have chosen or elected to work with someone and they're happy to work with us, we lead them through these steps and we guide them. It does take time, so we start with a one-to-one discovery call where we understand what exactly are they looking to achieve. Some people want to just buy a residential property from abroad. Some people are trying to buy a second home. Some people are looking to just stash away some cash till some particular point in time in their life. Some people want to get a second source of income. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. So we get on that first discovery call, and then we go on to a strategy call. And the strategy call is so critical because we want to help understand what kind of returns are you looking at? Are you looking at building long-term wealth? Are you looking at something that can replace your salary, for example? And then once we've clarified that, if you're happy to work with us, then we go ahead and sign the agreement, take a reservation, and we already are finding deals for you. Once we find the deal, and I like to say this, we take a fee for our service. And if anybody books a call, which we would invite you to do after now, we find out that at the minimum, we try to get you to sort of save as much as you paid us, if that makes sense. So if you pay us £5,000, which is where our fees hover around, depending on the kind of deal. If you were to pay us £5,000 to get you a house, you wonder what does that cover? Easily, I'll tell you that, first of all, we'll try to get you a discount that at least beats that. So a house that you would have paid, let's say, £140,000 for, because we have certain relationships and we sometimes speak directly to the vendors or the owners of the house, we should be able to get you a discount. So you find yourself paying 130 or 132 instead of 140. So that's instant value that we create for you. And then handling all of the hassle is something you will find extremely, extremely valuable. Now, legals and completions work with solicitors that we either provide or provided by the lenders. We're happy to work with either. Refurbishments, if it needs any. And then once the property is ready to be rented out, we look after that for you by getting you a reputable lettings agent. And the last bit here is the refinance, if applicable, within 2 years' time or 3 years' time. You want to pull money out, or you want to get a better deal, you want to get a better product for yourself, you want to get a better negotiation, then that's something we can also support you with. Now, this is the exciting bit. It's not a sales call, but because of those who have taken time to be here, and I'm really, really grateful, excited. I'm glad to see loads of you here who've registered and have also come to spend 60 minutes of your precious Sunday evening where you could have been doing something else. And so we're giving this as a 90-day gift. Now, we've had a lot of discussions with the team, and because this webinar will also be going out, anyone who's watching it will hear the same thing, but it might not apply. So that's why we've pegged it at 90 days. So if you want to sign up for our full portfolio building service within the next 90 days, we'll tell you what to do in the next slide, and it covers you. So you don't have to be ready today. If you contact us in the month of August or in the month of September, anytime between now and the 30th of September, with the same code which we would give you shortly after now, then the same discount will apply. Does it apply to people who are not here on this webinar? Unfortunately, we're not able to do that because that would just open us up to just about everybody. So we're doing this just for those that are action takers, those that want to take steps. Can I forward it to someone now? Well, we'll say yes, but it has to be that the person has been on this webinar or has been here through you. So to secure that discount, it has to be that you're taking action from now. And it's just a way of saying thank you. Does it cost us to do so? Yes, that's the honest truth. It does. So it's 20% off our fees for anyone who is taking action from this webinar to choose to work with us between now and the next 90 days. Right. How do you claim your strategy call? I'm trying to keep this again under 60 minutes because we want to take questions. So what do you need to do? You just need to scan the QR code on your screen now. Scan it. You could actually book a call in August. You could book a call in September. But if you're going to book a call, the discount code will be sent to you. If you book a call from now, we will send you a discount code and that will lock it in. I could have mentioned the discount code, so I'm going to leave one of the team to just put the discount code in the chat. So once you put that in the notes on your call booking, then the 20% will be applied. So just look out on the chat. We're going to put in the discount code now. So make sure to save it. And then if you scan the QR code, you will see it. What's the best way to send? So the QR code is on there. Again, because this is recorded, I can't say what the code is. Just check the chat and Lara has put it on there. Personally, I think there's a lot of noise and filtering through the noise can be very beneficial to you. If you're able to just have a clear head and say, okay, this is what I need to do. This is why I'm doing it. This is what I will get from doing it. Having that clear understanding than by going by every interesting trend on YouTube. If you aren't looking to buy property, it should have just opened your mind as to the power of leverage, how to leverage. It might not be property, it might be something else, but property is one of the single investment platforms where you're able to actually leverage. You can't particularly leverage with stocks and shares, but you definitely can leverage with property. Now, this is where we want you to help us. Your feedback matters. We're grateful for your time, and your feedback matters. Your feedback matters, ladies and gentlemen. Could you just scan the QR code and just tell us how you felt? What did it do for you? What has it helped you see? And we're looking forward to more webinars. What would you like us to cover in the next webinar? It's just 60 minutes, and we hope to do this again and again. But we need your feedback to do so. We'll close on this note. Every great investment begins with a great decision. We hope that this webinar has been one of yours. It's not a financial decision yet for some of us, but it's a decision to take action, to just get information about how you potentially could change your financial future. And we look forward to seeing you again and again, future webinars. Scan the QR code and we'd love to get your feedback. I know I'll be seeing many of you on the other side. But for some of us here, you might be at a point where you might not just be ready to invest because you're not in that position. But I mean, information can be of extreme value. In the next few months or years, you will definitely be ready to invest, or you might be able to share this information with someone else that it will be of value. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's been a pleasure hope you found it insightful, and I look forward to speaking with you either in August or in the month of September. That's why you need to give us your feedback so we know which month will be coming back to your screen. Till the next time, as usual, I say, stay happy and stay safe.